I'll start directly, the same way I started in the interrogation, when those guys from Delta Command shoved me into a windowless room and asked me to repeat everything. My name is Ethan Moore, a sniper with the 3rd Special Forces Group, and before I say anything, let me prepare you emotionally. There are things in the mountains of Syria that move like nothing you've ever seen. There are organisms that ignore gravity, physics, and logic, and I saw one of them right before my thermal sight. But the worst part wasn't seeing it. The worst part was when it stopped, there at the top of a 600-meter cliff, and looked directly at me as if it knew my name, my position, and even what I was thinking. I know how all this sounds. I too would think it's post-combat stress delusion, but I have the video. Or at least, I had it, before they took it. It was an opaque afternoon, the Syrian sky filled with that haze of suspended dust that seems to hide something. My spotter, Logan Price, and I were at OP-17, an advanced position propped against dry rocks watching insurgent routes. Nothing different from the usual. Until Logan murmured, "Ethan, there's something down there." The way he said that wasn't, "There's a target." It was, "There's a thing." And right there, in that exact second, I swear something inside me tightened, as if my body understood before my brain that what was coming from there wasn't human. And, before I forget, if you're listening to this right now, take a deep breath and subscribe to the channel, because there are things I'm going to tell you here that have never reached the public, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Back to it. I pressed my eye to the thermal sight, and that's where it all began. Something gigantic emerged at the foot of the mountain. It wasn't an insurgent. It wasn't a soldier. It wasn't an animal. And what happened in the following minutes? To this day, I try to explain it, but the truth is, there is no human explanation, and that is the part that hurts most to remember. Logan and I were at OP-17, an isolated advanced position set on a rocky ledge that dominated 3 insurgent routes. It was 2014, the peak of the chaos in the Deir ez-Zor region. The landscape was dry, silent, broken by mountains with walls so vertical they looked like they had been sawed with a blade. Our routine there was simple: monitor thermal signals, record nocturnal movement, report any infiltration, do not interfere without orders. A routine that, as tense as it was predictable. And predictability is everything a sniper desires. Logan was by my side, with that calm way of someone who sees everything before feeling fear. He had been my spotter for almost 2 years, and we had both seen too many things in that war. But nothing, absolutely nothing that came close to what we were about to witness. We had been there for 6 hours. No signs of life, no human heat on the slopes, only wind hitting the fine dust. Until, out of nowhere, the thermal sensors began to register oscillations that made no sense. They weren't common heat points. They were vibrations, irregular pulses, as if something were emanating heat in a cyclic way, almost breathing. "More, look at this," Logan whispered, without taking his eyes off the thermal tablet. I looked, and I didn't understand. It was as if something very large was hidden just out of sight, emitting bursts of heat that turned off and on without a pattern. No human does this. No animal does this. It was something else. And here is where I need to tell you something important. There are patterns in nature that our brain recognizes instinctively, and there are patterns that make us sick just by looking at them because they simply shouldn't exist. That was the second case. Logan adjusted the zoom. The pulsation increased. The ground seemed to vibrate in the thermal image. "This is coming from the base of the mountain," he murmured. I tried to stay calm, to focus on what I've always done, recognize threats, but a part of me already knew. It wasn't a human threat. It was another type of presence. I kept watching, trying to find a body, a silhouette, anything that would give logic to the oscillating heat. It was useless. That pattern didn't belong to anything that lives on the Earth's surface. And then, everything got much, much worse, because the thing finally stepped out from the shadow of the rock. I will never forget the silence of that moment. Not the common desert silence, but a silence that seemed to push the air against the throat, as if the entire environment were holding its breath. Logan was the first to see the movement, and I swear I saw his face turn pale, even with the camo cloth covering half his expression. He placed his hand on my shoulder, firm, rigid, as if he wanted to anchor me to the ground. "More! There's something down there, something big!" The way he said "something" already warned me it wasn't human. Snipers don't use the word "something" for insurgents or civilians. We use target, movement, contact, tango. But something? That means his mind couldn't classify what he saw. I lowered my head to the cheek rest of my MK-13, took a deep breath, and aligned my eye with the long-range thermal sight. It took 2 milliseconds for my brain to lock, another to reject what I was seeing, and one more to accept, against all logic, that that thing was really there. At the foot of the mountain, emerging between shadows and dust, there was a humanoid form, but too tall, too wide, too proportional to be an animal, but too proportional to be a human. 3 meters? A bit more? It was impossible to say with precision, but it looked enormous, solid, defined. But the worst came after. Its thermal signature wasn't normal. The entire body emitted heat, yes, but not in a constant way. It was pulsing, cyclic, as if something inside it glowed in intervals, and I soon realized the origin of the glow, the chest. There was an amber point, alive, vibrant, as if it were a luminous organ beating outside the skin. "Ethan, this is wrong," Logan murmured, and for the first time in all our missions, his voice failed. I zoomed in. The humanoid was motionless, leaning slightly forward like someone sensing the air. It seemed to smell the wind. The sensation I had was that it was deciding something, measuring, analyzing, like a predator that knows a territory better than you. That was when it made its first move. A light impulse, almost smooth, and then it began to climb the rocky wall, not using hands, not using claws, not using anything I could understand. It was as if gravity had no authority over it, and in that exact second, I felt something primitive wake up inside me, something that wasn't common fear. It was animal survival instinct. And if you would already be running at this part of the story, I understand you. Just hit the notification bell to follow the next parts of this account, because things are about to get much worse. The first thing you need to understand about that place is the slope. That wasn't a normal hillside. It was practically a vertical wall, a blade of rock that rose almost in a straight line for hundreds of meters. Not even experienced climbers would reach the top without equipment, without ropes, without planning. But that creature? It simply went, without impulse, without preparation, without hesitation. It just leaned its torso slightly forward and began to move upward as if it were walking on flat ground. It was fast, constant, fluid, and at the same time, completely wrong. I adjusted the zoom to the maximum. Logan was in charge of monitoring the thermal telemetry. That was when we noticed something that gave me chills to my very soul. Its limbs didn't move like ours. It seemed like each joint had a life of its own. The hips went first, then the chest, then the legs. There was no biomechanical logic. It was as if the body were composed of independent segments that articulated in impossible sequences. "This isn't human, Moore," Logan insisted, while his eyes darted between the scope and the tablet. I didn't answer, because there was nothing to say. I started marking the speed mentally. 30 meters, 50 meters, 90 meters in less than a minute. The amber glow in its chest increased as it rose, pulsing like a second heart. It was at that moment that a gust of wind passed through the mountain and brought a low sound, almost a moan of rock being compressed. But it wasn't the mountain, it was the creature, as if its body vibrated on another frequency. Logan touched my arm, hard. "It's going to reach the top too fast! More! This is absurd! Look at the telemetry!" I looked. The system showed the creature was climbing at an average of 150 meters per minute. In other words, 600 meters in 4 minutes. I opened the radio to communicate with command, but nothing. Silence, jamming, static, as if something, perhaps the creature itself, were interfering. I took a deep breath, keeping the scope connected to the ascending form. That was when I realized something else. The creature wasn't just climbing, it was coming in our direction, in a straight line. The path it was taking led exactly to the top where OP-17 was located, to our point. And in that instant, the fear ceased to be military. It became something primitive, a fear of being before something that doesn't respect the rules of our species, nor our physics. Logan spoke softly. "Ethan, what do we do if this thing gets here?" I had no answer. Because for the first time in all our missions, I didn't even know what kind of thing was coming. The creature continued to climb, and nothing in the world seemed capable of stopping it. The creature advanced up the wall as if gravity were an optional suggestion, but the worst was yet to come. When it reached approximately 400 meters in height, something changed. The movement stopped. It was as if the creature had detected something. And the way it did, it remained stuck in my memory like a scar. The creature turned its head, slowly, with almost surgical precision, to the exact point where Logan and I were. Exact. Not to the slope, not to some shadow, not to some life form, but to us. And I know this sounds impossible. We were almost 900 meters away, hidden behind rock, camo netting, shadow, and a blind angle. No human would see us. No animal would sense us. But that thing saw. I felt my mouth go dry, as if my tongue had disappeared. Logan, beside me, became completely still. The kind of immobility that isn't a shooting stance. It's true fear. "More! It knows!" "I know," I replied, almost breathless. The creature remained there, perched in the middle of the wall, as if it were evaluating. I saw the amber glow in its chest pulse stronger, in an accelerated rhythm, like a heart entering a state of alert. But it wasn't an alert against us. It was something else, something internal. The seconds passed slowly, maybe 10, maybe 30. The sensation was that time had stagnated, and then the most disturbing part happened. Its body leaned slightly backward, even while hanging on the wall, as if it were feeling the air, or something beyond the air. I got full-body goosebumps. The creature emitted a low sound, almost a muffled snort, deep, vibrating, impossible to distinguish if it came from the mouth, the chest, or the ground. Logan whispered, completely pale, "That thing is not of this world." I couldn't disagree. It was as if that creature worked with sensors we don't understand. Not sight, not smell, not hearing. It was something else, something broader, more complex, more ancient, and in that sinister immobility, in that absurd silence, I felt something I never felt in combat. The clear sensation that it was reading us, analyzing, decoding, recognizing, not as a threat, not as prey, but as a presence. The creature began to move again, and that's when everything got worse. When the creature began to move again, something became immediately clear to me and Logan. It wasn't simply climbing, it was choosing to climb. The difference might seem subtle, but it wasn't. Before, The movement was almost automatic, organic, as if climbing were as natural to it as walking on level ground. But now, after staring at us from nearly a kilometer away, it adjusted its pace. Its body began to advance with a precise cadence, as if it were measuring every meter. It was deliberate, exact, mathematical. And that was what bothered me most. Logan and I exchanged quick looks, the kind that say everything without saying a word. We didn't even need to verbalize it. That thing wasn't an animal. It wasn't instinctive. It was intelligent, perhaps in a way we can't comprehend. What came next was almost hypnotic. The creature began to move on two axes at the same time, vertically in the climb and horizontally, making small corrections as if it were following an invisible trail. No living being I know does that. It was as if its body had its own navigation system, something internal, perhaps linked to the amber glow in its chest. With every meter it covered, the glow increased, decreased, then increased again, like a luminous breath. Then Logan spoke, almost without moving his lips. "More. It looks like it's watching us too." He was right. The creature was climbing, but at all times, all of them, it tilted its head slightly in our alignment. I felt a weight in my stomach, the kind of weight you feel when you understand that something larger than you is happening, and you are on the wrong stage. At a certain point, about 500 meters above the ground, the creature stopped again. But this time, not to look. It turned its entire body, slowly, like an impossible contortion, and the amber glow began to pulse faster, 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 as if it were responding to something we couldn't see. That was when I noticed the most disturbing detail of that night. The creature seemed to be reacting to our presence, but also to something else. Something higher, more distant, more ancient, as if we were between it and its destination. And then, for the first time in that entire mission, I wondered, what if we weren't the ones observing it, but it was the one guiding us to observe it? The idea gave me such a strong chill that I had to pull my face away from the scope to breathe. The climb continued, but the feeling that we were part of a test didn't leave my head. And when it finally reached the top, everything changed. The creature completed the climb in just under 4 minutes. I repeat, 4 minutes to cover what not even professionals would climb in half an hour. And that's using every possible piece of equipment. When it reached the top, we lost our direct angle for a few seconds. The edge of the mountain blocked part of the view through the conventional scope. But the thermal kept picking up everything. And that was when we realized that something was deeply wrong. Its thermal signature, which until then had been unstable, irregular, almost organic, suddenly adjusted. It began to glow in a constant, intense way, without variation. It was as if the body had activated some kind of state, or shifted phase. Logan took the reading on the tablet, and I will never forget the tone of his voice. "More. This right here isn't a thermal pattern of life. Nothing living does this. Nothing." I knew it. He knew it. That creature wasn't just moving. It was functioning in a way that surpassed any terrestrial biological parameter. That was when we heard it. A dry sound. Deep, not coming from the air, but from the ground, as if something had emitted a vibratory signal, and it was responding. The creature stood perfectly still at the top of the mountain. The amber glow in its chest began to pulse much faster. Not like accelerated breathing, but as if it were receiving something. And just remembering it makes my stomach turn. Because I swear, ISWEAR. I saw the following. The rocks around it vibrated, grains of dust rose from the ground, a distortion field almost imperceptible formed for milliseconds. I even pulled my eye away from the scope thinking it was thermal distortion, but Logan saw it too. "This isn't natural. This is transmission. This is communication. And that was when the realization hit me. It wasn't fleeing. It wasn't hunting. It wasn't hiding. It was climbing there because of that signal, whatever it was. Perhaps it was a call, a command, or a pulse emitted by something buried in the mountains, or above them, or something coming from somewhere else. The problem is that while it listened to this thing, it slowly turned its body. This time not just tilting its head, but everything, as if its skeleton were liquid. And again, it looked directly at where we were. The difference is that now it wasn't a simple observation. That was recognition, evaluation, consciousness. I felt my throat close. Logan gripped his rifle tightly, even knowing that shooting would be useless. The creature remained like that for about 5 seconds, maybe 10, in total silence, in total control. And then it did something I will never forget. It leaned its body forward as if it were about to take a step into the void. And then it disappeared from the thermal spectrum for an instant. It vanished, evaporated from the image. "Ur! It's gone!" Logan nearly dropped the tablet. 2 seconds later, the signature reappeared, but now much weaker, as if it were moving away at an impossible speed, going toward the other side of the mountain, or something beyond it. If you've been following along until now, you've already realized that this story isn't for just anyone. If the channel deserves to keep bringing accounts like this, consider subscribing, because I need to know there are people with the courage to listen until the end. The creature disappeared completely, and that was when the true problem began. When the creature vanished from the thermal spectrum, Logan and I stood still for a few seconds, trying to understand what had just happened. The adrenaline was still high, but something even deeper began to happen around us. A sensation I can only describe as the entire mountain exhaling a different silence. It wasn't the common desert silence. It was something heavy, tense, as if the air itself were holding its breath. I tried to call command on the radio. Nothing. No hiss, no interference, no signal. Just void. "Test the backup," Logan asked, his voice low and tense. I switched frequencies, switched channels, switched modules. Same result. Absolute silence. More. The creature messed with this. "What? I know." But it wasn't just the radio. The telemetry sensors were going crazy. Random temperature peaks, readings that rose and fell in seconds, phantom points appearing on the thermal map, momentary failures in the digital zoom, thermal shadows where there should have been nothing. It was as if some kind of pulse or field emitted by the creature had altered everything around it, and we were trapped inside this invisible field. Logan took a deep breath. I noticed he was trembling, not from superficial fear, but from that fear that grips you in your bones. "More! What if it comes back?" We hold our position. "Hold position? Are you kidding? We have to record everything." My tone was firm, but the truth is that half of those words I spoke were trying to convince myself. The problem is that even though it was gone, the creature left something behind. A vestige, a trail, an impression in the air. And then, as if the mountain wanted to give us a late warning, something echoed from above. A deep sound, as if a gigantic rock had been dragged with force. But it wasn't rock, and it wasn't being dragged. It was organic. "More? That came from the peak." I know. And it was in that moment, exactly then, that I realized the fear had changed shape inside me. In the beginning, it was fear of the creature. Now, it was fear of what might be with it, or what it was responding to. Because that climb, that pause, that glow in the chest, none of it was random. It seemed like a ritual. It seemed like a call. It seemed like a response. And then the air became different, as if the pressure had suddenly dropped. Logan touched my arm. More. Do you feel that? I do. It was the same sensation I had in Afghanistan once, before an improvised detonation. A silence so absolute that it seemed to swallow sound itself. I looked at the top of the mountain, and I swear, even knowing the creature had vanished, I felt it was still looking at us. And before you think this is an exaggeration, hit the notification bell, because from here on out, what happened begins to enter territory that not even experienced military personnel can explain. I didn't know it, but the worst moment of the night was yet to come. I was already used to seeing strange things in war zones, shadows that moved, noises without origin, distances distorted by heat. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to what happened when the creature's thermal signature returned. Yes, it returned, but not like before. First, a weak point appeared, almost imperceptible at the extreme limit of the telemetry. A flash that lasted less than a second, then another and another. "More! Are you reading this?" Logan asked, his voice shaking. I didn't answer, because I had already understood. That wasn't the creature approaching, it was the creature searching. I felt it in the back of my mind, as if an internal instinct were screaming that that entity was scouring the terrain, retracing its path, seeking something or someone. And the moment I thought that, a new thermal point appeared, much stronger now, and this time it wasn't on the mountain. It was right behind OP-17. I turned so fast I nearly tore the camo netting. Logan fell to his knees, dropping the tablet. No! 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 How did it? The signature made no sense. The creature had vanished in the opposite direction, to the other side of the mountain, nearly 2 kilometers away. It was physically impossible for it to have appeared behind us without being seen passing through the scope, the thermal, or any angle. But the point was there, weak, oscillating, unstable, as if it were in transition. The temperature varied so fast it looked like the system was frozen, but it wasn't. It was it, or a part of it, or something else connected to it. The air pressure dropped once more, this time so strongly that my ears popped. The wind changed direction for no reason, and a strange smell filled the air, something like hot iron mixed with wet stone. I swallowed hard. Logan was white, completely white. "More! We need to get out of here. If we leave now, we're exposed." "Exposed to what? To what, More?" He was losing control, and I couldn't blame him, because in that instant, I felt it too. A weight behind us, a presence that made no noise, didn't breathe, didn't step, but it existed. Something was forming there behind us, at the edge of our perception, like a figure trying to take shape in an environment that rejected its existence. And then, the thermal point exploded in intensity, from 20 degree to 40 degree to 60 degree to 80 degree in less than a second. And then, silence. It was gone. Everything was gone. There was no more thermal point, no more heat radiation. It was as if that thing had dematerialized or passed through us. A shiver ran up my spine, the kind that warns you something just touched your soul, even if it didn't touch your body. Logan cried softly. I breathed slowly, trying to maintain control. And I said the only thing that came to mind. It wasn't looking for us. Logan. Then, who? I closed my eyes. I think it was looking for something else, and we were just in the way. And the worst was yet to come. I would like to say that in that moment, Logan and I thought like soldiers, cold, analytical, trained. But no, we thought like human beings trying to survive something that made no sense. The desert, previously quiet, began to change. Not physically, there was no wind, no sand moving, but something inside it seemed to awaken, as if the creature had left an impression, an echo, an energy that remained there, a presence that moved without a body, without a form, without limit. I touched the radio once more. Nothing. It was like trying to talk to a wall. Logan pressed my shoulder. "More! We need to retreat, now! If we retreat now, we're exposed in the open path. More! You saw what this thing does to physics! Do you really think exposure is our biggest problem?" He was right, and at the same time, there was no reason for anything in that place. The creature broke logic, time, distance, and I felt something I never felt in combat. The absolute certainty that we were being watched by something that didn't need eyes. I turned my body slowly, checking the perimeter. Nothing visible, nothing audible, but the physical sensation was so intense it felt like the entire earth was breathing with difficulty. "Prepare for withdrawal. Light pack. 2 minutes," I said. Logan nodded, though he was trembling. That was when something happened. While dismantling part of the camo netting, Logan froze, literally. He stood motionless, eyes wide, staring at something behind me. I turned, slowly, with my stomach turning to ice, and there, on the rock just above our position, was a mark that wasn't there before. The rock had melted, as if something extremely hot or extremely fast had passed through the mineral. The impact left a curved, glowing scar, still smoking. I touched it with the tip of my finger. I burned my skin instantly. "More! That shouldn't exist." I kept looking at the mark, and I realized something else. It formed an arc, as if it were part of a circle or part of a larger pattern, and in that instant, what I felt wasn't fear. It was the sensation that the creature had passed too close. So close it marked the environment and nearly marked us. Whatever it was, it had moved fast, too fast to be seen, too fast to be captured on the thermal, and too fast to be real. The decision was immediate. "Withdrawal, now. Short line, no stopping," I ordered, with a voice firmer than I actually felt. We descended the side slope, always maintaining visual contact with the top, always expecting to see that thermal signature reappear. But it didn't return. Not on the radar, not in sight, but inside the body. Yes. The entire desert seemed to carry its memory, and that is the kind of thing you don't erase. If you're here until now, I need you to hit the notification bell, because the next parts of this story mess with things that not even official reports had the courage to put on paper. If you're listening to this without skipping, without pausing, without leaving, consider leaving a like, because this story isn't going to be easy to finish. We retreated, but the creature didn't stay behind. The creature stayed inside, and that was the beginning of the true nightmare. The forward base where we took shelter was just over 3 kilometers from OP-17. And yet, the journey back seemed endless. Logan and I followed without saying anything. It wasn't fear, it was something deeper, as if words could lure that thing back. When we finally reached the perimeter, we were met by 2 internal security soldiers who looked at us as if they knew something was wrong, but not what. I requested immediate communication with command. In less than 5 minutes, we were called into a closed room in the tactical module, and then the strangest detail of the night happened. Delta Command was already there, before any report, before they even confirmed our arrival. That simply doesn't happen. These guys only show up when they already know what is going on, and that night, it seemed they knew much more than we did. One of them, a tall man with no name, no visible rank, no expression, requested our devices immediately. Thermal tablet, visual records, internal scope backups, memory cards, radio modules, even auxiliary reading tools. Everything was placed inside unidentified black boxes. "Containment protocol, hand it all over," he said, Logan hesitated. I didn't. I had seen this kind of procedure before. It only goes into action when the government doesn't want something to exist. When I handed over my tablet, the man stared into my eyes for 2 seconds that were far too long. "You saw nothing! You recorded nothing! And no one will know what you think you saw!" The phrase wasn't a threat. It was an instruction. I felt Logan swallow hard beside me. Another agent opened a thick file marked with a band I had never seen. Special classification, level black, far above, confidential, secret, or top secret. He read without expression. Biological phenomenon class 5 recorded at OP-17, anomalous vertical movement, variable thermal signature, total electromagnetic interference, possible phase shift, extreme risk of exposure. Class 5, the maximum possible, the kind of entity that shouldn't even exist in the military vocabulary. At the end, the agent dropped the document on the table and handed us something else, non-disclosure terms. These weren't the common ones. They were expanded versions, long, written in a way that legally erased us from the event. We only existed as witnesses as long as we signed. After that, officially, we weren't there. Logan was breathing too fast. I placed my hand on his shoulder, not as a soldier, but as a friend, and signed. It was that or something worse. The agents watched us for a few seconds, cold, evaluating if we would say anything beyond what was permitted. When neither of us spoke, one of them replied, "Good night, gentlemen. Get some rest. The operation ends here for you." A lie. Nothing ended there. It was exactly at that moment that I realized what we saw on the mountain wasn't an incident. It was an event, and that it had probably happened before, with other teams, in other countries, in places we've never heard of. But the worst was when the last agent left the room and, before closing the door, looked at us and said, "And if you feel that something is still watching, don't report it. This kind of thing doesn't like to be remembered." The mission officially ended that night, at least on paper. But the truth is that nothing ended for me, nor for Logan. I tried to sleep. I swear I tried. But whenever I closed my eyes, the image of the creature climbing the mountain returned like an inverted flash, as if the brain were trying to understand something it wasn't made to comprehend. On the first 2 nights, I woke up with the feeling that the tent canvas was trembling, not from wind, but as if something touched it and recoiled. The 3rd night was worse. I woke up at 03:12, exactly. The digital clock was struggling to keep the time. It would change some numbers, then go back to normal. Something was interfering. I got up. I reached for the table to grab my flashlight, and that's when I felt it. I can't explain this rationally because nothing was there, but the sensation came as if someone had run their hand over the back of my neck, slowly. I turned so fast I hit my head on the bed frame. Nothing, but the sensation remained. A presence, not physical, not tangible, but absolutely conscious, as if something were analyzing me, not threatening. Analyzing. Logan was in the bunk next to mine. He wasn't sleeping either. I saw it in his eyes when he got up. "You're feeling it too, aren't you?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the floor, trying to understand how 2 trained, experienced soldiers could be so close to panic over something that wasn't physically there. "Since the mountain," I said. "I know." And then Logan said something that still gives me the chills. "More. When it looked down from up there, I felt like it marked us." Marked. That word kept hammering in my mind because that was exactly it. The creature didn't just see us, it recorded our presence as if it had kept something about us, something internal, something I carry to this day. The following days got worse. Small details began to emerge. Light interference on radios whenever I entered the room. Weird thermal variation on the equipment when Logan touched it. Shadows that seemed wrong for milliseconds. The feeling that the ground vibrated far off, very deep. Recurring dreams of a mountain glowing from the inside. I tried to ignore it. Tried to convince myself it was just trauma, illusion, stress. But then came the worst. 3 days after the mission, while cleaning my rifle, I noticed something on my hands. A slight yellowish glow on the skin. Very faint. Almost invisible. I looked at Logan. He had the same glow on his fingers. Very light, as if something had impregnated our skin through indirect contact. We showed it to the base doctor. He ordered Delta Command called immediately. The same cold, nameless man returned to speak with us. He looked at our hands, frowned for an instant, the only moment of real emotion, and smiled without humor. Those are thermal residues, a side effect of the exposure. They will fade. Exposure to what? I asked. He took 3 seconds to answer. To something you shouldn't have seen. And he left the room. Logan looked at me with hollow eyes. More. We didn't leave that mountain. And I knew exactly what he meant. Part of us stayed there. And part of that thing came with us. If you're feeling that shiver running up your back, don't worry. That means you're following the story the right way. If you want to stay strong until the end, consider subscribing. There are details that haven't been told yet, and only those who can stand getting this far will want to hear the rest. The worst was yet to come. I could say things got better when we were removed from the mission, that the distance from the mountain erased the sensation. That time helped, but I'd be lying. The truth is that the creature never left my mind, and I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean literally. In the months that followed, while I was already in safe territory, far from Syria, far from all that, episodes began to happen. Small at first, the amber glow appearing in my peripheral vision, the feeling of being watched in empty rooms, deep noises in moments of profound silence, difficulty distinguishing dreams from memories. I tried therapy, I tried medication, I tried to ignore it. Nothing worked, and then came the episode that convinced me that that entity, that thing that climbed the mountain, left something in me. I was at home, months later, cleaning the yard in the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep. I looked up at the completely clear sky, and for the first time since the mission, I felt something like peace. That was when the ground vibrated. Not much, not like an earthquake, but exactly like the moment the creature stopped in the middle of the climb and listened to that signal. I froze, and then I could swear I heard a snap. Not in the yard, not in the sky, inside my head, as if a frequency had been reactivated. At that same moment, I felt my chest burn slightly, exactly on the left side, in the same rhythm that the amber glow pulsed in the creature's chest. I sat on the ground, hand on my heart, breathing fast, trying to stop the panic from exploding. And there, I understood, finally, that being didn't see us. It registered us, like data, like a frequency, like part of something larger, and that sensation never went away. Since then, from time to time, the glow appears for a second on my hand, or on the wall, or on some metallic surface. So fast that if I blinked, I'd miss it. But I know, it's it, or whatever it is, something I don't understand, something that doesn't obey the laws of our world. Something that looks at us like someone looks at a shadow on the wall, not with interest, but with recognition. On some days, mostly in the silent early hours, I feel that it is closer. Not physically, but as a frequency, as a presence. And between us, I'll tell you the only truth I've been avoiding. On that mountain, we didn't find a creature. We were found, and I think Logan was right. We didn't come out of there whole. A part of us stayed on that rock, and a part of that thing came with us. If you made it this far, thank you. Truly. Few people could listen to this until the end. If you want to keep receiving accounts like this, real, raw, uncomfortable, hit the notification bell and comment from where you are listening to this story. It's important to me to know how far these accounts reach.